They pushed the contract across the mahogany table with such an air of calculated victory, a sound I can still recall, the low, rasping whisper of paper against polished wood. "Sign here, Vivian," my business partner Roger commanded, his mouth twisting into what he likely imagined was a smile. "You'll never survive without us. This company would crumble in a week without our expertise." His wife, Patricia, a woman whose diamond rings caught the afternoon light streaming through the very windows of the building I'd mortgaged my home to buy, merely examined her manicured nails with studied indifference. "Really, darling, you should be grateful we're even offering you anything. Most people in your position would walk away with nothing. They thought they had me. They thought my age, my trust, and my perceived lack of modern cunning would seal my fate. But I'm Vivian Clark, and this is the true story of how I unearthed their hidden agenda and turned their certainty into my own resounding victory. Before I unveil exactly what happened next, tell me, where are you watching this from? Drop your city or state in the comments. I love knowing where my stories travel."
Before I go on, I want to ask something of you. Where are you watching from today? I love picturing the towns, the kitchens, the cozy chairs where people like you sit and hear my story. It makes me feel less alone in all this.
Now let me take you back to where this intricate web of deceit first began, because you need to understand just how carefully they had planned to erase me. It was April 2019, and I was 63 years old. For 18 years, I had poured my lifeblood into Clark & Associates, a medical billing consultancy in Portland, Oregon. What started in my spare bedroom had blossomed into a firm with 42 employees and coveted contracts with 17 major hospital networks across the Pacific Northwest. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving, a testament to sheer grit and unwavering dedication. Roger Chen infiltrated my company in 2008, right after the financial crisis had left so many vulnerable and desperate for new opportunities. He was smooth, impeccably educated with an MBA from a prestigious university, and he spoke a compelling language of expansion and modernization. I'll admit it, I was flattered. Flattered that someone with his credentials seemed to value a woman who'd built her empire through sheer determination and night classes at the community college, not from a corporate playbook. "You're the heart of this company, Vivian," he'd purred back then, his words laced with a calculated charm. "But you need someone who speaks the language of modern business. Let me handle the contracts and negotiations. You focus on what you do best, the relationships." In hindsight, these were the first threads of a meticulously spun web. I made him a 40% partner. It felt like the biggest mistake of my life at the time, but it was merely the opening act of a deeper drama. Patricia entered the scene in 2015 when Roger married her. A lawyer by trade, she immediately inserted herself into the business as our legal consultant. Within 6 months, her influence over Roger was complete. She convinced him they deserved equal standing with me. I was exhausted from managing our rapid growth, and they'd been handling so much of the operational side, subtly taking over more and more territory. Against my attorney's advice, a warning I now replay in my mind with chilling clarity, I agreed to restructure. We became 3 equal partners. That was the moment the true machinations began to accelerate. The changes were insidious, a slow, systematic erosion of my control. Clients began receiving correspondence on new letterhead that barely mentioned my name. Contracts were renegotiated without my input, decisions already made by the time I arrived at meetings. When I dared to question anything, Roger would sigh, a practiced gesture of exasperation, and say, "This is why we need professionals handling these matters. Vivian, your way of doing things is, well, it's dated." By early 2019, I had become a stranger in my own company, watching from the sidelines as my legacy was dismantled brick by brick. My assistant, the one I'd hired and trained, now reported to Patricia first. My office had been moved to a smaller, less prominent space down the hall. They called it reorganization for efficiency, a corporate euphemism for systematic marginalization. The signs were there, if only I hadn't been so blinded by trust, so focused on the visible growth they superficially fostered. Then came that April morning, the day they summoned me to the conference room with their contract. 37 pages long. I knew because I counted every single one, my fingers tracing the cold paper as Roger droned on about fair market value and generous severance packages. "We've had the company independently valued," Patricia interjected, sliding another document toward me. "Given current market conditions and projected growth that Roger and I have engineered, I might add, your third is worth approximately $385,000. I looked up sharply, the number echoing like a cruel joke. $385,000? I built this company from nothing. Our annual revenue is over $4 million. Roger leaned back, his fingers steepled like some kind of corporate philosopher, oblivious to the storm brewing within me. "Revenue isn't profit, Vivian, and profit isn't value. The fact is, most of our major clients have relationships with Patricia and me now. The hospital administrators trust our approach. Modern, data-driven, professional." He paused, letting that last word hang in the air like a veiled insult, a calculated jab at my traditional methods. "Without us, those contracts would evaporate. You'd be back to working out of your house, if you could even get clients at your age." At my age, there it was, the subtle ageism woven into their narrative of professional superiority. "The industry has changed," Patricia added, her voice dripping with false sympathy, a performance of concern. "Medical billing is all about AI integration now. Automated systems, blockchain verification. These aren't concepts you've kept up with. No judgment, Vivian. You built something wonderful for its time, but that time has passed." I felt something hot and sharp in my chest. Not panic. I'd felt that plenty of times before in the rough and tumble of business. This was different. This was pure, incandescent rage crystallizing into absolute clarity. "And if I don't sign?" I asked quietly, my voice surprisingly steady. Roger and Patricia exchanged a glance, a silent confirmation of their rehearsed script. They'd been waiting for this question, ready to deliver the final blow. "Then we'll be forced to call a partnership meeting and vote you out," Roger said, his voice devoid of any pretense of regret. 2 votes to 1. We've already consulted with our attorneys. Given the partnership restructuring you agreed to in 2015, we have every legal right. You'd leave with nothing but your original capital contribution, which, accounting for depreciation and business expenses, amounts to roughly $47,000. He let that paltry number sink in, a calculated psychological blow. "Or," Patricia continued, her eyes cold, "you could sign this. Take the $385,000 and walk away with your dignity intact. We'd even let you say the retirement was your choice. No one needs to know you were forced out." The contract included a non-compete clause that would prevent me from working in medical billing anywhere in Oregon, Washington, or California for 5 years. At 63, that might as well have been forever. There was also a comprehensive NDA designed to silence me, preventing me from discussing the terms with anyone except my immediate family and attorney. "We'll give you 24 hours to think it over," Roger said, standing up, his tone dismissive. "But Vivian, be realistic. You're not going to get a better offer, and fighting us would drain whatever savings you have left. We've already spoken with Mitchell and Associates about legal representation. They're very interested in our case." Mitchell and Associates, the biggest, most aggressive business litigation firm in Portland. The message was clear. They had resources, powerful allies, and a ruthless legal team. I had myself. After they left, I sat alone in that conference room for almost an hour, staring at those 37 pages that sought to bury my life's work. Then, I picked up my phone and made a call. "Vivian Clark, it's been a long time." James Whitaker's voice on the phone sounded exactly as I remembered, warm, sharp, and completely unimpressed by corporate intimidation tactics. We'd met 15 years earlier when he'd helped me with a contract dispute. He'd since become one of the most respected business attorneys in Oregon, the kind who took cases because they interested him, not merely for the fee. "James, I need help, but I have to be honest. I don't know if I can afford you anymore. Tell me what's happening." I explained everything. The gradual takeover, the restructured partnership, the contract now sitting in front of me with its insulting buyout offer and its cage of restrictions designed to end my career, to make me professionally obsolete. When I finished, there was a long pause. "Do you have copies of all the original partnership agreements?" he asked, his voice now devoid of warmth, replaced by a steely focus. "Every single one. I might be old-fashioned, but I keep paper files of everything important." "Good. What about financial records, bank statements, tax returns, client contracts?" "All of it, in my home office." Another pause. Then, "Vivian, don't sign anything yet. I'm going to ask you some very specific questions, and I need you to think carefully before answering. First, when Roger and Patricia renegotiated client contracts, did they ever use your signature or forged authorization?" My mind raced back through the last few years. There were some contracts I didn't remember signing, but they showed up in the files with my signature on them. I'd simply thought maybe I'd signed them and forgotten, or signed a stack without reading carefully. We were so busy. "Did you give them power of attorney to sign on your behalf?" "No, never." Second question, the company accounts. Are you still a signatory on all of them? "I think so. Patricia handles most of the banking now, but my name should still be on everything." "You think so, or you know so?" I should check." "Do that today, if possible." Third question, do you have any documentation showing that the business was solely yours before Roger came on board? Tax returns, business licenses, anything with just your name?" "Yes. Everything from 2001 to 2008. I could hear the faint echo of a smile in James's voice now. "Then here's what we're going to do. You're going to bring me every document you have tomorrow morning, every partnership agreement, every financial record, every piece of correspondence. And Vivian, we're going to find out exactly what your partners have been doing behind your back." "James, I can't afford to get into a legal battle. They've already retained Mitchell and Associates." "Let me worry about Mitchell. You know what I think happened here? I think your partners got greedy and sloppy. I think they've spent the last few years systematically positioning themselves to push you out. And I think they've probably cut corners doing it. People who are willing to forge signatures are usually willing to do worse." "You think they forged my signature?" "I think we're going to find out. Can you be at my office at 9 tomorrow morning?" "I'll be there." That night, I went through every file in my home office, my breath catching with each discovery. What I found made my blood run cold. There were signatures on documents I'd never seen before, contracts with new clients that cut my commission structure without my knowledge, amendments to our partnership agreement that drastically altered profit distribution, all bearing my supposed signature. And most damning of all, a life insurance policy on me, taken out by the company, with Roger and Patricia listed as equal beneficiaries. A chilling $2 million. I sat on my office floor at 2 a.m, surrounded by papers that told a story I'd been too busy, too trusting, too blinded by loyalty to see. They hadn't just planned to push me out. They'd been systematically erasing me from my own company, rewriting history to make it look like they'd been the driving force all along. There was more. Bank statements showed transfers I hadn't authorized. My personal salary had been gradually reduced while theirs had increased significantly. Client payments were being routed through accounts I didn't even have access to. This wasn't merely corporate maneuvering, it was a deep, calculated betrayal. I photographed everything with my phone, a silent witness to their hidden crimes. Then, with trembling hands, I put it all carefully back in order, leaving no trace of my discovery. At 9 o'clock the next morning, I walked into James Whitaker's office with 3 file boxes, a trove of evidence that would expose their conspiracy. He spent 4 hours going through everything while I sat there, drinking coffee, watching his expression grow darker, grimmer. "Vivian," he finally said, looking up, his gaze intense. "I need you to understand something. What we're looking at here isn't just unethical business practice. This is fraud, possibly embezzlement, forgery. If we pursue this the right way, Roger and Patricia could face criminal charges." "I just want my company back," I whispered, the words heavy with a mix of fear and resolve. "I know, but here's what I'm thinking. They've given you 24 hours to sign their contract, right? That deadline is tomorrow morning. Yes. Good. We're going to let them think you're going to sign. In fact, you're going to call Roger this afternoon and tell him you've thought it over and you'll sign tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. Tell him you want your attorney present. That's standard. They won't be suspicious. What are we really doing? James smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. We're going to that meeting, and you're going to sign something, but it won't be their contract. He pulled out a legal pad and started writing, his pen scratching furiously. While they've been building their case to push you out, we're going to build something better. We're going to file an emergency injunction, freeze the company accounts, and petition for a full audit. But we're not going to tell them that until we've already done it. Can we do that with this evidence? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Absolutely. The forged signatures alone are enough for a judge to freeze everything while we investigate. And Vivian, when we dig deeper, and we will dig deeper, I guarantee we're going to find more. I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. A fragile, exhilarating flicker of it. There's one more thing, James said, his voice dropping, the warmth completely gone. The life insurance policy. That's unusual. Combined with everything else, it creates a very disturbing pattern. We need to be careful. I want you to vary your routine. Stay with family if you can, and definitely don't go anywhere alone with either of them. The hope froze in my chest, a cold dread replacing it. You think they would actually... I think desperate people do desperate things, Vivian. And people who've committed fraud to the tune of what I'm seeing here? They're desperate, whether they show it or not. A shadow, cold and stark, stretched across the bright promise of victory. I called Roger that afternoon, keeping my voice tired and defeated, selling the performance of surrender. I'll sign tomorrow, 10 o'clock. My attorney will be there. Standard procedure, you understand? Of course, Roger said, and I could hear the triumph, the arrogant victory, echoing clearly in his voice. We knew you'd see reason, Vivian. This really is for the best. That night, I stayed at my daughter Linda's house in Beaverton. I hadn't told her much, just that there were some complications at work, but she knew me well enough to see something was profoundly wrong. Mom, you look exhausted. What's going on? I wanted to tell her everything, to confide in her, but James had advised keeping quiet until after tomorrow. Just some business things I'm working through, honey. It'll be resolved soon. It was a lie, but one forged in the crucible of strategy. The next morning, James picked me up at 8:30. In his briefcase were documents Roger and Patricia had never seen, documents they didn't even know existed. How do you feel? He asked as we drove toward downtown Portland. Terrified, angry, ready, I admitted, the truth of my emotions swirling within me. Good. Remember, let me do most of the talking. If they ask you direct questions, answer honestly but briefly. Don't elaborate, don't explain, just answer what's asked. We arrived at the office, my office, at 9:55. Roger and Patricia were already in the conference room, radiating a smug confidence, along with a man I didn't recognize, expensive suit, leather briefcase, their attorney. Vivian, Patricia said coolly, her eyes glinting with barely contained triumph. I see you brought representation. This is Martin Hughes from Mitchell & Associates. Hughes nodded stiffly at James. Whitaker, I didn't know you were practicing partnership law these days. I take interest in cases, James replied pleasantly, his voice deceptively calm. Shall we begin? Roger, eager to finalize their conquest, pulled out the contract, the very one from 2 days ago. Everything's in order. Vivian signs. We transfer the funds within 48 hours, and we all move forward. James opened his briefcase, his movements deliberate, almost theatrical. Before Miss Clark signs anything, I'd like to review some documents with you just to clarify a few points about the company's financial status. Patricia frowned, her carefully constructed facade starting to show the first hairline cracks. That's not necessary. We've provided a complete financial disclosure. I'm sure you have, James countered, his tone unwavering. But as Miss Clark's attorney, I have a fiduciary duty to ensure she understands exactly what she's signing away. He pulled out a stack of papers. For instance, these bank transfers from March 2018. Can you explain why $127,000 was moved from the primary operating account to an account Miss Clark doesn't have access to? The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. The air crackled with sudden tension. That was for operational expenses, Roger said quickly, a flicker of panic in his eyes. A separate account for vendor payments. Standard business practice. Standard practice, James corrected, his voice a low, dangerous rumble, would be to have all partners as signatories on any business account. This account has only you and Patricia. Why is that? Hughes leaned forward, his professional composure faltering. Mr. Whitaker, what exactly are you implying? I'm not implying anything, James said, his gaze fixed on Roger and Patricia. I'm asking questions about irregularities we've discovered, like these contracts. James slid several documents across the table. These have Ms. Clark's signature, but Miss Clark has no memory of signing them. Perhaps you could help explain that. I watched the color drain from Patricia's face, her carefully painted mask finally slipping. This is ridiculous, she stammered. Vivian signed hundreds of documents. Of course, she doesn't remember every single one. Perhaps, James conceded, a shark smile playing on his lips. Or perhaps someone was signing her name without authorization. That would be forgery. Roger stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. I think we're done here. Actually, James said calmly, his voice cutting through Roger's bluster. We're just getting started. He pulled another document from his briefcase, a legal paper stamped with the official seal of the court. This morning at 8:00 a.m., I filed an emergency petition with the Multnomah County Circuit Court. Judge Rebecca Morrison granted a temporary restraining order freezing all Clark and Associates bank accounts, pending investigation of possible fraud and embezzlement. He slid the court order across the table, the papers a death knell to their elaborate scheme. You what? Patricia's voice was sharp enough to cut glass, pure shock and disbelief. Furthermore, I've petitioned for a complete forensic audit of all company finances going back to 2015. The court has appointed Anderson & Compton, a forensic accounting firm, to begin that audit immediately. They'll have access to everything, bank records, client files, emails, everything. Roger's face had gone from pale to a furious red, the carefully constructed edifice of their control beginning to crumble around them. You can't do this. We have a legitimate partnership agreement. A partnership agreement that was amended multiple times without Miss Clark's knowledge or consent, James retorted, producing more documents. These amendments show Miss Clark's signature. Miss Clark says she never signed them. We'll let a handwriting expert determine the truth. Hughes, their attorney, was scanning the court order, his expression growing more concerned by the second, his earlier arrogance melting away. This is highly irregular. What's irregular? James interrupted, his voice rising, is a life insurance policy for $2 million taken out on a business partner without her knowledge, with the other partners as beneficiaries. What's irregular is systematically reducing a founding partner's salary while increasing your own. What's irregular is routing client payments through hidden accounts, actively concealing the true financial state of the company from its rightful owner. Patricia found her voice first, lashing out like a cornered animal. This is extortion! You're trying to strong-arm us into giving her more money. This is due diligence, Mrs. Chen, and it gets better. James pulled out yet another document, a complaint filed with professional oversight. I've also filed a complaint with the Oregon State Bar regarding your conduct, Mrs. Chen. As an attorney, you have ethical obligations, forging documents, creating conflicts of interest, failing to disclose material facts to a client. These are all violations that could result in disbarment. I never forged anything, she shrieked, her voice cracking with desperation. Then you won't mind explaining to the bar's ethics committee how your signature and Roger's appear as witnesses on documents that Ms. Clark supposedly signed when Ms. Clark never signed them in your presence, because that's also fraud. The room went dead silent. Hughes, seeing the rapidly escalating disaster, snapped his briefcase shut. I need to speak with my clients privately. Of course, James said, a picture of calm confidence. Miss Clark and I will wait in the lobby. You have 30 minutes. We left them there, the air thick with their rapidly crumbling authority, and walked to the lobby. My hands were shaking, adrenaline coursing through me. That went well, James said quietly, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. Well, Patricia looked like she wanted to kill you, I exclaimed. Exactly. Angry people make mistakes. Right now, Hughes is explaining to them just how much trouble they're in. The criminal exposure, the civil liability, the bar complaint. He's telling them that the best-case scenario is they walk away with nothing, and the worst case is they go to prison. What do you think they'll do? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I think they're going to make us an offer. And Vivian, we're going to refuse it because we're not settling. We're going to court, and we're going to win. 28 minutes later, Hughes came to the lobby alone, his shoulders slumped, his earlier confidence utterly shattered. My clients are prepared to make a counteroffer, he said stiffly. We're not interested in counteroffers, James replied without missing a beat. You should hear this one. They'll resign from the partnership effective immediately. They'll sign over their combined 70% share to Ms. Clark for the sum of $1. All company assets revert to her full control. In exchange, she agrees not to pursue criminal charges and to keep the matter confidential. No, James stated flatly, his voice unwavering. Hughes blinked, completely taken aback. Excuse me? You heard me. No deal. Your clients committed fraud. They forged Miss Clark's signature on legal documents. They embezzled company funds. They created a fraudulent life insurance scheme, a sinister plot to profit from her demise. And you want us to let them walk away with a mere slap on the wrist? Not a chance. Mr. Whitaker, be reasonable. If this goes to trial, it will be expensive and time-consuming for everyone. I'm prepared for expensive and time-consuming. The question is, are your clients prepared for prison? Hughes's jaw tightened, a muscle twitching in his cheek. The DA might not even prosecute. Want to bet on that? James countered, his eyes steely. Because I have copies of these documents being delivered to the district attorney's office right now. I also have copies going to the FBI, since some of these fraudulent contracts involve federal Medicare billing. That's wire fraud, federal charges. I watched the last bit of color drain from Hughes's face. He hadn't known about the federal angle. This was a deeper conspiracy than even he had fully understood. I need to consult with my clients again, he mumbled, defeated. You do that. Hughes disappeared back down the hallway. James turned to me. How are you holding up? I feel sick, I confessed, the full weight of the confrontation settling on me. But also, James, is there really enough evidence for criminal charges? Absolutely. The forged signatures alone are slam-dunk fraud. The financial irregularities show clear embezzlement. And that life insurance policy, that's intent to defraud, possibly worse. The DA will love this case. It's white-collar crime with clear victims and undeniable evidence. They didn't just try to steal your company, they orchestrated a systematic financial attack. Another 15 minutes passed. Then Roger appeared, walking toward us without Hughes. His shoulders were slumped, his earlier arrogance completely gone, replaced by a desperate, pathetic vulnerability. Vivian, he said quietly, his voice a ghost of its former booming self. Can we talk? Just you and me. Anything you say to Miss Clark can be said in front of her attorney, James interjected, his voice firm. Roger ignored him, looking directly at me, trying one last manipulative maneuver. I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But please think about what you're doing. If you pursue criminal charges, Patricia could lose her law license. I could lose everything. Is that really what you want? After everything we built together? The sheer audacity of it took my breath away. After everything we built, Roger? I built this company alone. I brought you in. I trusted you. And you repaid that trust by systematically stealing from me and trying to force me out with threats and forgery. It wasn't supposed to be like this, he mumbled, looking away. Things just got complicated. Complicated? I bit back, my voice laced with venom. You took out a $2 million life insurance policy on me. That was Patricia's idea? She said it was standard business practice? Standard practice to profit from my death? Get out of my sight. Roger's expression hardened, a flicker of his old self returning. Fine, but you should know. We've already retained a criminal defense attorney. We're prepared to fight this. Good, James said, stepping forward. We look forward to it. The forensic audit took 6 grueling weeks. What Anderson and Comey discovered was worse than any of us had imagined. Roger and Patricia had embezzled over $800,000 from the company over 4 years. They'd created shell corporations to invoice Clark and Associates for services never rendered, funneling funds into their hidden accounts. They'd renegotiated client contracts to include kickbacks paid directly to accounts they controlled. They'd even been charging personal expenses, lavish vacations, luxury cars, Patricia's exorbitant wardrobe, to the company as legitimate business expenses. The life insurance policy had been purchased using company funds I'd never authorized, part of their grand, chilling design. If something had happened to me, Roger and Patricia would have collected $2 million and owned 100% of a company worth millions more. It was a conspiracy of breathtaking scope and cold-blooded intent. In August 2019, the Multnomah County District Attorney filed criminal charges against both of them: fraud, forgery, embezzlement, and conspiracy. The Oregon State Bar suspended Patricia's license pending investigation, effectively ending her legal career. The civil case moved faster. In September, Judge Morrison ruled decisively in our favor on every count. The partnership restructuring was declared invalid because it had been based on forged documents. The court recognized me as the sole legitimate owner of Clark & Associates, my name and my legacy fully restored. Roger and Patricia were ordered to return all embezzled funds plus interest, pay my exorbitant legal fees, and were permanently barred from working in medical billing in Oregon. A fitting punishment, considering their grand pronouncements about my obsolescence in the industry. But here's the part that truly satisfies me. Remember those modern clients that Roger and Patricia claimed would leave without them? The hospital administrators who supposedly only trusted their professional approach? I called every single one of them personally. This is Vivian Clark from Clark & Associates. You may have heard there's been some changes in our company structure. I wanted to reach out personally to assure you that we remain committed to the same quality service we've always provided. 17 contracts, 17 conversations, and you know what happened? Not one client left. In fact, 12 of them admitted they'd been uncomfortable with how Roger and Patricia operated. Too aggressive, too focused on upselling, they said. Several mentioned that they'd been relieved when they saw my name back on company correspondence. We worked with you for years before they came along, Vivian, the administrator at Providence Portland told me, his voice genuinely warm. Honestly, we kept the contract because of your reputation, not theirs. The quiet conspiracy of trust that they had tried to undermine had held firm. By December 2019, Clark & Associates had not only retained every existing client, we'd added 3 new contracts. The publicity from the case, while uncomfortable at times, had actually raised our profile. Other business owners who'd been pushed out of their own companies, particularly women, reached out to me for advice, recognizing the patterns of betrayal in their own experiences. That's when I realized something important. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about exposing a systemic problem. I started consulting with small business owners about partnership agreements, helping them structure deals that protected their interests. I spoke at business schools and entrepreneurship conferences. I even helped 2 other women take back companies they'd been fraudulently pushed out of, empowering them to unveil their own hidden truths. Clark & Associates continued to grow, stronger and more transparent than ever. By 2023, we had 63 employees and contracts with 28 hospital networks. I hired a young woman named Sarah Chen, no relation to Roger, thankfully, as my executive director. She's smart, honest, and has a gift for the modern technology side of the business that I'll admit isn't my strongest area. But this time, I did it right. Clear contracts, transparent finances, regular audits. Trust, but verify. As the old adage goes, a lesson painfully learned, now deeply ingrained. And Roger and Patricia? I heard Patricia moved to California and works as a paralegal. Roger went into real estate, his corporate ambitions now relegated to a much smaller stage. I've never spoken to either of them again, and I never will. People ask me sometimes if I feel vindicated, if winning felt as good as I thought it would. The truth? It felt better. Not because they lost everything, though I won't pretend that justice didn't satisfy something deep in me, but because I proved something more important, that you're never too old to fight back, that being underestimated can be an unexpected strategic advantage, that experience and determination can overcome arrogance and greed. That contract they pushed across the table in April 2019, the one they were so certain I'd sign, the document meant to be my professional epitaph? I framed it. It hangs in my office now with a brass plaque underneath that reads, "They thought I couldn't survive without them. They were wrong." It's a good reminder on difficult days. And yes, there are still difficult days. Running a business doesn't get easier just because you've won a legal battle. But I wake up every morning knowing that everything I've built is mine. Legitimately, legally, permanently mine. My daughter Linda finally got the full story about a year after everything settled. She cried, then got angry, then hugged me so hard I could barely breathe. "Mom, why didn't you tell me what was happening? I would have helped." "I know, honey, but I needed to do this myself. I needed to know I still could." Last month, I turned 68. Clark and Associates threw me a birthday party in the office. The whole staff was there, plus several of our long-term clients. Someone made a cake shaped like a contract with "void" written across it in red frosting. Sarah Chen gave a toast. To Vivian, who taught all of us that being underestimated is just another form of strategic advantage. Everyone laughed. Everyone cheered. And I looked around that room, at the company I'd built, lost, and reclaimed, and felt genuinely, completely happy. Because here's what Roger and Patricia never understood, what they could never grasp in their web of deceit. This was never just about money or success or business. It was about dignity. It was about refusing to be erased. It was about standing up and saying, "No, you don't get to decide when I'm done. I decide that, and I'm not done yet, not even close." I'm planning to work another 5 years, maybe more. I'm training Sarah to eventually take over, properly this time, with clear succession planning and robust legal protections for both of us. I'm building something that will outlast me and honor everything I've learned, both the easy lessons and the hard, bitter ones. That signature they were so sure I'd give them, the one that would have ended everything I'd worked for, I gave them a signature, all right, just not the one they wanted. I signed the court documents that froze their assets. I signed the petition for forensic audit. I signed the civil complaint. I signed the victim impact statement. Every signature was an act of reclamation. Every signature was proof that they'd miscalculated badly, that their grand conspiracy had been utterly unveiled. They laughed when they said I'd never survive without them. They're not laughing anymore. And me? I'm thriving.